Chapter 37. Auric. The Blood Games, the second level. Crinan kept his head low as his ATV roared toward the battle in the valley below. He steered the vehicle with one hand, and in his other he held his shotgun tightly. He was ready to enter the fight. As he drove, he watched an unsettling wall of fire in the distance draw closer and closer to his position. Based on what the announcer had said before, Crinan knew that the fire would not stop moving until only one person remained. It moved slowly and swirled like a tornado, burning everything in its path. Crinan seriously didn't want to deal with that. He quickly approached the town. Torpedo Town, he realized it was called when he read a sign on the way in. He thought the name was strange, considering it was situated in a valley, but Crinan wasn't about to ponder on naming conventions. His first targets were in sight. He squeezed the brakes and turned the handlebars of the ATV so that he skidded to a stop, threw it in neutral, and then raised his shotgun to his shoulder. Within only a moment, he had his target sighted, and a smile spread across his face. "Bye," Crinan whispered as he squeezed the trigger. The weapon discharged, and a slug flew out and through the face of his target. The person's body flew backward from the impact, what was left of his head slamming against a brick wall behind him. Glowing weapons and items flew from the person's body, landing all around him. Crinan didn't waste any time. He dismounted his ATV and ran forward.
Player, Old Nothing, executed. Player rank, 12,488,415,336. Congratulations, Pretty Kitty 6969420. You have advanced in ranking. Previous rank, 14,130,756,141. New rank, 13,309,585,738. Previous percentile, 47%. New percentile, 44%.
Sword, Crinan mumbled to himself as he scanned the dropped items. He didn't see one and cursed. He had discarded his frying pan long ago because he had nowhere to put it and only had a few shells in one of his pockets. He didn't want to run out of ammo or get caught up in a melee situation and not have any way to fight back. "I'll just take this then," Crinan said as he knelt down and grabbed a pistol. He shoved it into the waist of his pants and kept running. Boom! Crinan discharged his weapon again, dropping another player. Again, no sword. This really frustrated Crinan, and he moved on to his next target.
Player, Artie 1231, executed. Player rank, 1,232. Congratulations, Pretty Kitty 6969420. You have advanced in ranking. Previous rank, 14,130,756,141. New rank, 6,654,793,485. Previous percentile, 44%. New percentile, 22%. New percentile achieved. Congratulations, you are showing your true power. Your buffs have been modified. Cosmetic items unlocked. See your wardrobe for more details. Congratulations, you have crossed the threshold of the 40th and 30th percentiles and into the 20s. New ability pending.
Holy shit, Crinan shouted as he fired his weapon. Unfortunately, the notification had distracted him and he only grazed his target's neck. The person returned fire and Crinan quickly dipped behind a brick wall for cover. After racking his weapon, he waited for his opportunity and popped up when his opponent's rifle clicked empty. "Next time shoot in bursts," Crinan advised before firing a slug through the being's chest. She flew backwards, crashing into the ground, dead. Crinan snorted at the sight, but then heard footsteps approaching quickly behind him. "Not today," Crinan shouted as he spun around and slammed the stock of his weapon into his would-be attacker's nose. She screamed and fell to the side, giving Crinan an opportunity to blast her in the back of the head.
Player, Mary Glizzermage, 9209, executed. Player rank, 14,218,573,699. Player, Sunny Mama, 9, executed. Player rank, 16,125,745,398. No rank change. Current rank 6,654,793,485. Current percentile 22%. Achievement unlocked. 2 girls, 1 gun. Congratulations, you killed 2 female players without changing weapons or reloading. Error. Invalid reward detected. Achievements no longer Blood Games mechanic. Initiating achievement.cleanup. Achievement deleted.
Spear? Crinan snorted as he saw the weapon she had charged him with. You got that close with a spear? What, were you going to hit me with the haft? He rolled his eyes and turned, waiting for his next victim.
Only 30 players remaining, boys and girls. This is where the shit really starts to stink, my friends. The iron is glowing. Time to strike it while it's hot. Let's see some blood in these games!
Oh, shut up, Crinan grumbled. He did a quick count in his head. Realizing he only had 5 slugs left, he found cover and ejected the mag. Quickly, he dug his hand into his pocket and grabbed the handful of shells he had taken from the box, feeding them into the magazine. He filled it, having 2 left over and 1 in the chamber. With a nod, he hopped up and ran toward the nearest sound of screaming. Crinan ducked into an alley, shotgun in hand. The world he was in felt much more like the real world, and it was invigorating. The presence of the suns, water, plants, it all fueled him in a way the darkness, screaming, and fire hadn't been able to. For the first time in a long time, he felt alive. He felt like he was an actual person, and that what he did mattered. And then he felt a knife in his side. Crinan grunted as he was tackled to the ground by an unknown force. Instinctively, he reached his shotgun above his head, tossing it as far from his attacker as he could so that it couldn't be easily used against him. Crinan drove his knee into the person's crotch, pounded his fists against their back, and slammed his forehead into their nose. He heard popping, groaning, and the thump of knuckles on flesh, but the person on top of him didn't move. Crinan felt pressure against his arm as the being pushed against it with one of his hands. He pulled his other hand back, revealing the knife that had stabbed Crinan only moments before. Crinan didn't have time to think. He had time to make one move, and so he pressed his palm against the person's chest, snarled, and thought bolt level 1. The lightning passed through Crinan's palm and blasted the person backward. Crinan skidded back on the ground a few feet, but quickly got up and pulled the pistol from his waist. He hurried over to his attacker, lifted the weapon, and fired. A chunk tore free from the person's head as the bullet ripped through him, and with a scowl, Crinan finally lowered the gun.
Player, Hydra the villain, executed. Player rank, 8,766,411,544. No rank change. Current rank, 6,654,793,485. Current percentile, 22%.
Silently, Crinan ran back and claimed his shotgun. He looked down at the dead attacker and exhaled the breath he had been holding. Stab me in the neck next time, idiot. Crinan snorted at the sight of the dead person and ran to the entrance of the alley. He pressed himself up against the wall, shouldering his weapon, and peeked out. He checked his left and right, noting an explosion further down the road, and then took a hard right, heading deeper into town. As he jogged, Crinan noticed that the wall of fire was already flirting with the outskirts of town. The heat was palpable even from where he stood, and the hot wind that it gave off blew against his skin. It wasn't like the wind he had experienced as he fought to cross the corridor back in Dread's Keep, but it most certainly was present. Crinan ignored the fire and the heat. He had more pressing matters to take care of, and according to the infernal wall closing in on his position, he was running out of time. He had to finish this game as quickly as possible.
Come on,
Crinan grumbled as he ran.
Where are you?
He heard explosions and gunfire all around him, shouting, fighting, the sounds of combat. He chanced upon 2 people fighting and dashed forward. With his shotgun raised, he blasted one, racked the weapon, and then shot the other. They both fell to the ground, and then the sound of a vehicle accelerating filled his ears. He turned and quickly threw himself backwards, landing on his ass as he watched the truck plow over the dead bodies.
Player Black Ikawa executed. Player rank 7,977,158,546. Player Not a Gaian 77 executed. Player rank 7,977,158,547. No rank change. Current rank 6,654,793,485. Current percentile 22%.
Damn it! Krynen yelled as he got to his feet. He fired a slug at the truck, hitting the tailgate. The slug tore through the thin metal body of the vehicle, and they flew back toward the forest. The tires of the vehicle screeched as the driver spun it around so the front was facing Krynen. He frowned at this sight and raised his shotgun. "Wait," Krynen whispered. The truck revved its engine, and Krynen set the shotgun down. He faced the vehicle and held his palms out just as the wheels squelched against the pavement. Bolt level 1, Krynen thought. A quick flash of lightning snaked from his hand and toward the incoming vehicle, but he missed his target. He stumbled backward with a curse on his lips, but quickly forced his balance and held his palm out again. "Bolt level 1!" Krynen yelled. His shot once again was wide, and he was out of time. As he found his balance again, he realized that there was a very small likelihood of him being able to avoid the truck. He could dive to the right or left, but the truck would just swerve and hit him. In the split second that Krynen realized this, he watched as the driver's side of the cab smashed inwards. With a loud crunch of metal and shattering glass, the truck flipped so that its passenger side door was facing the ground, and then it began to roll away. Krynen watched the truck tumble into the roiling firewall that was closing in on them, picked up his shotgun, and shouldered it.
"Don't shoot!"
A familiar voice shouted. Krynen turned his head and watched as Dolly approached him. He lowered his weapon and started walking toward her. "You're here," he called out to her. "And you just destroyed a truck."
"That I did,"
Dolly replied. She looked over at the wall of fire and smirked.
"Not the first one in my life. Probably not the last one either."
"Oh, well, okay." Krynen rolled his eyes at his sister. "Come on, we have people to kill." It was Dolly's turn to roll her eyes, but she followed him as he turned.
"Hey, Krynen. Wait."
She called out as he started to walk.
"Come with me. I need you to listen to me before this ends."
"By the brothers, what?" Krynen asked with an annoyed tone. She grabbed his wrist and pulled him into a warehouse-looking building. They quickly swept the area and then stopped. Dolly turned to face Krynen, and he noticed that she had a slightly bothered expression.
"You are going to have to kill me,"
she said bleakly.
"To win, I'm going to have to lose, which means you will move forward and I will move back."
Krynen nodded at this, understanding her words. They had already talked about it, but he hadn't spent too much time thinking about it.
"Listen, we are down to 13 people in the match,"
Dolly continued.
"The battle will be over soon, and I will do everything in my power to ensure that you win so that you can get the fuck out of here and continue your life. But look, Krynen, as your big sister, I need you to promise me something."
Krynen raised an eyebrow, trying to keep an indifferent demeanor. He was, however, interested in what she had to say. "What do you want?" he asked.
"I want you to fight your hardest,"
Dolly replied, her tone sincere.
"Get back to the world and go after everything you believe in. Kill whatever gets in your way. Tear down whatever holds you back. Do not react to situations. Learn how to control them."
She paused and bit her lower lip as she looked down at the ground.
"I have done a lot of bad things in my life, Krynen. Things I hate myself for, and that I know there's no coming back from. I am in too deep. I am broken. But you have died, and you are about to be reborn. Use this to allow yourself to become someone new and strong. Be better than you ever were, and never apologize for it. Bring that Malenka girl with you. Hold her and kiss her and be happy with her. There's just too much pain in the world. Please do not add to it."
"Sarah, Crinan started, but Dolly shook her head.
Crinan, you will probably never see me again after you leave the Hells.
Dolly said softly.
And if you do, it will probably be your job to kill me. And it will be my job to kill you. Just know, if we are ever in that situation, I will lose the fight on purpose. There are very few people in my life that I love, brother.
Dolly started to sniffle slightly.
But you are definitely, without a doubt, one of them. I promise you. I love you, brother. And I do not.
Crinan felt tears gather in his own eyes, but he blinked them away. He stood in the warehouse and stared awkwardly at his sister. He wanted to comfort her, but he didn't feel like he truly loved her the way she loved him. She was supposed to be his enemy, but at the same time, he was supposed to be her brother. He sucked on his 2 front teeth for a moment as he pondered the situation, and finally, with very heavy feet, he took a step forward. "Hey," he whispered. She looked up at him, and he looked down at her. For a moment, they stared at each other, and then Crinan, suddenly unburdened, lunged forward and wrapped his arms around her. Dolly gasped, but quickly responded by grabbing hold of him tightly. She grasped the cloth on the back of his shirt and buried her head into Crinan's chest, suddenly weeping uncontrollably.
I've been alone for so long, Crinan.
Dolly sobbed.
You, Kirsten, Chris, Ruben, Mom and Dad, they were all I knew when I was taken. The thoughts of you are all I've had.
Crinan felt his heart melt at the sudden outpouring of emotion from his sister. He realized in that moment that in all those years it was just easier to believe that she was dead. When she first revealed her identity to him in the Hells, he wanted to hate her, to believe that she was evil and a traitor to his family. That was easy for him. It meant that he had no responsibility in the situation, that he could just shrug it off and paint her as the enemy. But Sarah, or Saracen as she called herself, wasn't his enemy. This realization was painful to Crinan. It didn't make sense. It was paradoxical in a way. The two fought on opposite sides of the war. They had different goals and followed completely different people, yet they were also brother and sister. They had the same parents, the same hopes and dreams and love had been bestowed upon them. They couldn't deny the fact that they, despite their positions in the world, were linked by love. "Hey, stop," Crinan said as he pulled back from his sister. "Listen to me. We're going to be okay. You're going to be okay. The world we live in is so fucked to shit. That doesn't mean we stop trying, right?" Dolly nodded at him. She sniffled and closed her eyes for a moment, and Crinan continued. "Look, I don't know. I haven't seen you in years, and I don't know you anymore. I shouldn't care. I don't want to care, but I get it. You came to the Hells to help me get out. You're risking everything. I know that means something, and I won't take it for granted. And when I get out, maybe one day, maybe we can talk." Dolly snorted and shook her head.
Crinan, my fate is solitude,
she said in somber response.
I am bound by my oaths. I have nowhere to run. No way to run.
Shut up, Crinan said. He leaned back in and gave her a quick hug. She exhaled heavily, once again resting her head against Crinan's sternum, and closed her eyes. It all ended too quickly for her, but it was enough. One of the few people in the world whom she loved had been able to love her back, and that brought her joy. Crinan stepped back and nodded at Dolly. "It'll all be okay. I promise." Dolly smiled, and then her head suddenly jerked to the side. Brains and bits of skull blasted out the right side of her face, and she dropped to the ground like a ton of bricks. Crinan's eyes grew wide, and he immediately raised his shotgun, firing blindly in the direction that the sudden attack had come from. He quickly strafed to his right, hoping that his covering fire would allow him time to find safety.
6 players remain. This is where it gets dirty, boys and girls. Get ready for the fight of your lives. The fire is closing in on you. Victory is within reach. Do you have what it takes, players? Are you going to be the victor of the Blood Games?
Crinan tossed his empty shotgun to the ground and pulled his pistol from his pants. He dove through an open window and rolled behind a smoldering truck for cover. He looked behind himself for enemies, but saw nobody there. The firewall was within 50 feet of him and closing in by about an inch a second.
Brothers, fuck it all,
Crinan hissed. He heard shooting from nearby and peeked out the side of the truck. A bullet pinged off the metal. He ducked back behind cover and grit his teeth in fury.
Okay, think.
A single idea popped into Crinan's mind. He had to act on it. He had no time to think it over. Crinan reached his hand around the right side of the truck and blasted a bolt of lightning where he thought his attacker should have been. He blasted backward a few inches and then bolted to his left, pistol at the ready. It took a few seconds for the attacker to spot Crinan, and that was all the time he needed. Crinan charged forward, opening fire and striking the person square in the chest 2 times. She screamed and fell backward, dropping her rifle in the process. Crinan approached, shot her in the head, and then bent down and picked up her assault rifle.
Player, Ducky Quack Honk, executed. Player rank, 10,897,325,652. No rank change. Current rank, 6,654,793,485. Current percentile, 22%.
Cool, Crinan said as he tucked his pistol back into his pants. She had dropped a few magazines on death, so Crinan scooped them up and replaced the used one for a fresh one.
3 enemies remaining. The fire cometh, my friends. Prepare yourselves for its cleansing flames.
Weird, Crinan said in response. He shouldered his rifle and hurried to find cover. The fire was drawing closer and closer, and Crinan had no way to avoid it. He had to find the other 2 players and kill them. Pressing himself up against the brick wall of a building, Crinan leaned out to check for movement. He quickly spotted someone running across the street. Crinan zeroed in on him and fired a burst, sending the person to the ground. They started crawling, and Crinan fired another burst. He missed, but Crinan watched the flames crawl over his target, reducing them to ash, and gulped as he turned around to search for the final enemy.
And then there were 2. The final showdown between Pretty Kitty 69-69-420 and none other than our very own ranked 42 player, Auric. As many of you know, Auric is a professional Blood Games combatant, wins nearly every game he plays in, and streams it all to viewers at home just like you. Make sure you like, share, and subscribe to Auric's channel.
Make sure to like and subscribe to this dick, Crinan retorted. At that, Crinan heard a loud crash. He spun around, and his face paled when he saw a creature that looked like a half-bull, half-person. It stood at least 8 feet tall. Its shoulders were broad, its body was covered in coarse brown fur, and it had 2 massive horns atop its head. In its hands was a massive sledgehammer, and it had powerfully smacked aside the truck that Crinan had used for cover earlier. Wasting no time, Crinan opened fire. His bullets hit their mark, but Auric seemed to shrug off the attacks as his body was surrounded by his blue ethereal shields. Auric's nostrils puffed out 2 plumes of gray smoke, and he lowered his gaze to meet Crinan's.
Rank 6 billion?
Auric bellowed in a deep, rough voice as he stared at Crinan.
Pitiful. Absolutely fucking disgraceful.
He kicked his right hoof against the ground and charged forward with a speed Crinan didn't expect. Quickly, Crinan darted to the side to evade the attack, and Auric blew past him. Crinan used the opportunity to fire a few bursts at the creature, but his bullets simply bounced off the blue force field.
Hold still, you little shit!
Auric yelled as he turned and swiped at Crinan. Crinan jumped back, firing a few more shots. Auric belted a laugh at Crinan's futile attempt and burst forward, crashing his shoulder into his chest. Crinan went flying backward and skidded against the ground before finally coming to a halt only a few feet in front of the firewall. The heat bore down on Crinan, and he began to sweat. He quickly jumped to his feet and emptied the rest of his magazine on Auric. When it clicked empty, Crinan didn't bother reloading. He simply dropped the weapon to the ground and pulled out his pistol. He fired relentlessly, stepping forward so that the wall wouldn't consume him. It did him no good.
You're empty, little buddy.
Ulrich roared with laughter.
Any last words?
Come get me, Krynen said. At that, Ulrich huffed and charged forward. Krynen waited for the last second and then dove out of the way again. Ulrich came to a screeching halt and spun, baring his teeth.
I said hold still!
He yelled as he raised his hammer into the air. Krynen scrambled to his feet and held out his palm. How do you like your steak? Krynen shouted. Ulrich squinted his eyes briefly, but Krynen didn't give him a chance to respond. I like mine well fucking done! At that, Krynen whispered, Bolt level 2, and a lightning bolt passed from his palm and into Ulrich. Krynen was lifted off his feet as he flew backward and crashed into the ground behind him. Ulrich's shields took the blow of the bolt, but the force behind it pushed Ulrich backward and into the wall of fire. Krynen watched as the half-bull, half-person's body was engulfed in flame. He writhed for a moment before turning to ash, and Krynen couldn't help but smirk at the sight.
Player, Bullet Floof, executed. Player rank, 42. Congratulations, Pretty Kitty 6969420. You have advanced in ranking. Previous rank, 6,654,793,485. New rank, 3,327,396,763. Previous percentile, 22%. New percentile, 11%. New percentile achieved. Congratulations! You are showing your true power. Your buffs have been modified. Cosmetic items unlocked. See your wardrobe for more details. Congratulations! You have crossed the threshold of the 20th percentile and into the 10s. New ability pending. Pretty Kitty 6969420 wins! What a display that was! It is always amazing to watch a new player rise in the ranks. After that display of strength, this new player has crossed the 20th percentile threshold and is now into the 10s. We will all keep a keen eye on you, my friend. State your name so that your new fans know who to look for, and so that your new enemies know who to hunt.
Krynen watched as the wall of fire stopped moving and seemed to just disappear altogether. He spun in place for a moment and looked around at his surroundings one last time, knowing that he was about to go back to the darkness of the hells. He looked at the green trees, the blue sky, and warm, comforting brothers above. A blue swirling portal opened behind him. He was tempted to walk through the portal without saying anything at all in response to DJ's inquiry, but an even bigger, much more petty side of him simply couldn't help himself. I'm Krynen Jameso, he declared, looking all around him. Centurion of Black Knight, the guy who's been fucking your day up. Whoever's listening to this, let me tell you one thing. Go fuck yourselves. I hope you get a chance one day to rot in here just like I have, just like centuries of innocent people have. Fuck you, fuck your goddess, and fuck your small-dicked emperor. Oh, and make sure to like, share, and subscribe, whatever that means. At that, Krynen lifted his middle finger, waved it for all to see, and then turned around and walked toward the portal. As he was about to walk through, he paused, though, as a thought entered his mind. Sarah, he mumbled. Thank you.